This man got away with murder for 15 years. Hello there, stranger. This is part 61 of the England's Whole Lifers list, so for your discretion, as always, is advised. So today I'm telling you about Peter Britton Tobin, who was born on the 27th of August 1946 in Renfrewshire, Scotland. Described as a difficult child, Tobin was sent to a residential institution for out-of-control children aged 7. These were called approved schools. He would also go to a Borstal, which is a detention centre for young people. I have no idea why he was sent to these places at such a young age, but either way, not a great start. 1970 saw his first stint in jail for burglary and forgery. He then moved to Brighton and married his 17-year-old girlfriend in August 1969. He was 23. She would divorce him 2 years later. He remarried in 73 and with this wife had a son. This marriage would last 3 years until she left him, taking their son with her. He would marry again, but not until 1989, and he would go on to have another son with that lady, born later that same year. In 1990, they moved to Bathgate in Scotland, but it was short-lived before this wife would again leave Tobin, returning to Portsmouth, which was her hometown. All three women would describe the same experience with Tobin, falling in love with a charmer, marrying him, and then he would turn violent and sadistic. When his third wife had left him, Tobin had stayed in Bathgate in Scotland, but he would also move in 1991 to Margate in Kent, and then again in 1993 to Havant, which is just up the road from Portsmouth, in order to be close to his son. In August 93, when he was still living in Havant, specifically Lee Park, he was home one day when two teenaged girls stopped by. They'd gone to visit one of his neighbours who wasn't home, so they'd asked if they could wait in Tobin's flat. He said yes, but then held them at knife point, forcing them to drink strong booze before essaying and R-ing them and stabbing one of them. His 4-year-old son was present during the entire ordeal. Tobin turned the gas on the cooker and then left, clearly believing that the two girls would not survive his attack, but by the grace of the gods, they did. They were just 14 years old when he did this to them. He went on his toes and stayed under the radar by joining the Jesus Fellowship in Coventry, some 140 miles away, and he used an alias. Side note, please don't jump in my comments bashing any religion. That is not okay. Bad people hide in these sorts of organisations for a reason. They are supposed to be trustworthy, and for the most part, they are trusting. There's a reason bad men and women hide in these organisations, and it is not because their evil is accepted or supported there. So please use your loaf before you start pointing fingers. Thank you so much. Tobin returned to Brighton, where he was found and arrested, and in May 1994 he pled guilty to his charges. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was 48 years old at the time, and I know what you must be thinking, that this can't have been his first crime, and you are absolutely right, it wasn't, but we'll get there. Tobin was released in 2004 and returned to Renfrewshire, Scotland, aged 58. He was, of course, placed on the ex-offenders register, and so when he left Renfrewshire without notifying police, a warrant was issued for his arrest. This was November 2005, and Tobin was using another alias, this time Pat McLaughlin, and he was working in St Patrick's Church in Glasgow as a handyman. Angelica Cluck was a 23-year-old Polish student temporarily residing at the Presbyterian St Patrick's Church and working there as a cleaner to help fund her studies. She was seen with Tobin on the 24th of September 2006 and would never be seen alive again after that. On the 29th of September, Angelica's body was discovered underneath the floorboards near the church confessional. She had been beaten, awed and stabbed, but was still alive when she was placed into the underground chamber. Tobin was arrested in London and a 6-week trial ensued where he would be found guilty of the murder and sentenced to 21 years in prison. Scotland does not have the whole life tariff. After the conviction, police had started looking into the disappearances of other young women and girls, one of them being Vicky Hamilton. Vicky was just 15 years old when she vanished in February 1991. She had been waiting for a bus home. Tobin, of course, had moved from Bathgate to Margate in 1991, but it just so happened to be merely weeks after Vicky's disappearance. 2 houses previously occupied by Tobin had been searched between October and November 2007, one of them in Southsea and one in Margate. Nothing was found at the Southsea property, but human remains would be recovered from the back garden of the property in Margate on the 14th of November 2007. The remains would later be confirmed to be those of 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton. They would also find a knife with Vicky's DNA on it in one of Tobin's old houses. It's believed that Tobin took Vicky in Scotland and that he killed and dismembered her there before driving down to England with her remains in the car and burying her in the back garden of the new house in Margate. Just 2 days later, on the 16th, more human remains were recovered from the same garden. Dinah McNichol was 18 years old when she vanished in August 1991. She was from Essex but visited a music festival down in Hampshire and then hitchhiked home with a friend. Hitchhiking, believe it or not, was a socially acceptable way of moving around back in the day, so please, no victim blaming here. Dinah's friend would be dropped off before her, and so she was left alone with the guy who had picked them up, and she was never seen alive again. It was Dinah's remains that were discovered near to Vicky's. Dinah's father was actually in the middle of being interviewed about his daughter's disappearance and the discovery of Vicky's remains when the second discovery of more human remains were found. He was informed, and this poor man stuck his hand up in the air, crossed his fingers and said, "Please let it be Dinah." He just wanted an end to the misery of not knowing what had happened to his little girl. Tobin would be convicted of the murder of Vicky Hamilton in December 2008 and was given another life sentence. He would not be convicted of Dinah's murder until the 16th of December 2009 when he received his third life sentence. There are many more vanished and murdered women and girls that could be victims of Tobin's. 12 are real possibilities, and Tobin apparently boasted of having many more victims than he was convicted for. Police found and published images of 32 pieces of jewellery that are believed to be trophies of Tobin's. In at least a couple of these cases, it seems really clear that he was the perpetrator. He has all of the characteristics of a serial. It's gutting that we'll never know how many victims Tobin had, that so many families have had to live with the devastation and trauma that must come with having a vanished family member. He took his secrets to the grave, though, and died in October 2022, aged 76. This is a seriously frightening case, though, because he seems to have a wide victim profile and various methods. He moved around a lot, so it's really hard for authorities to try and track down and trace whether he was in exactly the right place for certain crimes. I personally don't believe for 1 second that Tobin's victim count is 3. He took the lives of both Vicky and Dinah in 1991, and by 1993 he was so comfortable that what he did to those two 14-year-old girls, he did inside his own flat. And between his release from prison in 2004 and then his murder of Angelica Cluck in 2006, he was on the run. It's my personal opinion that we don't just receive earthly justice. And so sometimes when I think some of these evil bastards might be resting, I stamp really, really hard on the floor to wake them up. What a terrible, terrible case. And as usual, there was a lot more that I couldn't fit in to tell you guys. Of course, rest in peace to the 3 known victims. 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton, 18-year-old Dinah McNichol, and 23-year-old Angelica Cluck. And I hope Peter Tobin is burning in hellfire. I sometimes like to fantasize that with these bad guys like Tobin, before he crosses the sticks or has his heart weighed against a feather, that he has to face the people he hurt in this world. That may sound silly to some, but there has got to be more to it than just this. Let me know, as always, what you think in the comments. And if you've stayed with me up until now, then thank you for watching, and I will see you for the next one.